Hey everybody, welcome to a midweek conversation. Happy New Year also. Happy New Year, right? Like the first one of 2023, which is crazy.
That's weird to say.
Yeah, excited to see what this year has for us, and I think it's appropriate that as we started a new year, you led us off with a sermon on new life, newness of life. Always a great topic, always something worth our remembrance and our focus and our attention. Any thoughts that you wanted to expand upon from the sermon? You know, you and I have talked about the hard thing isn't coming up with a full sermon. The hard thing is whittling it down to a sermon. Anything that is kind of like a sidecar to your sermon that you wanted to talk about?
I don't think so. I mean, there was like rabbit trails that I wanted to go on.
Yeah.
You know, like the passage that Jesus quotes and talking about the messianic prophecy of that. And, you know, we could get into all of that, but we'd be here forever. And it'd be totally off topic. So I don't think we have any side. I mean, it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah. All right. Then, so we were reading Ezekiel 37. We were reading 2 Corinthians 5. We're reading Galatians 2. Great chapters. Ezekiel, possibly my favorite Old Testament book. I think I've said that before. Valley of Dry Bones, great passage. Just a beautifully powerful imagery of what conversion, what salvation does in the life of the believer. I have one or two thoughts on 37 about some of the imagery that God uses in this passage. Anything stand out to you? Like, what was there something beyond the Valley of Dry Bones coming to life that you were like, you know what, I think this passage really speaks to the message?
Really, so the reason I chose, and I don't know why I'm not turned there already, but the reason I chose it, is because it's like, it is this prophecy of what God, you know, is going to ultimately do in his son Jesus. Like, he is going to give people new hearts. He is going to literally raise dead people to life. And I just think that imagery is, you know, because we talk about it a lot, and I think it just gives a really clear image, you know, of our deadness and how he makes us alive. But really, one of the main reasons I chose that passage was because all that work that's being done is God. He's telling Ezekiel to speak and prophesy, and you know, but Ezekiel is not raising anybody. Ezekiel is a
God
part
says,
of
you shall know I am the Lord when I open your graves and raise you from your graves.
And so like that was one of the emphasis that I wanted people to catch was, look at who's doing this work. Because we maybe sometimes, I think in American Christianity, think that like, it is our decision. Like, it is our decision to follow Jesus, but the work that we're walking into is all God. You know, we don't, again, it was freedom from the law. Like, all the work has already been accomplished. And so that's one of the main reasons.
Nice.
Passage,
I love it. I love the details that in Hebrew, the word ruach is used for both literal physical breath, but then also for spirit. And so it's interesting to me, or telling to me in 37, where he switches from, you know, up at the top, he's like, look, I will cause breath to enter you. What is that, verse 5? And then you jump down to verse 14, I will put my spirit within you and you shall live. And it's just, I love that subtle lesson there. And I think I really appreciate the imagery of, he doesn't just say dry bones come to life, but like he actually talks about like the muscle sinews and the skin and the flesh. And, you know, it's this idea of we bring nothing to the table. And so everything that moves us, everything that like all of it comes from God. And, you know, you have this imagery of a body being knit together. Like, where else do we see that imagery, right? Before you knit me together in my mother's womb, as the Holy Spirit knits the church together and assembles it. And so it's just, it's really such a wonderful thread in the tapestry of Scripture. And so I think it's a great reminder.
It really is. It is a great reminder. Ezekiel is, you know, probably one of my favorite books, and that's probably one of my favorite passages. And I just think it's it's kind of, I just love that he's giving Ezekiel this image. And Ezekiel doesn't live physically long enough to be able to see, like, oh my gosh, like the Messiah is doing that constantly.
Yeah.
You know, every person who comes to faith, this is another person who's being raised to life.
Yeah.
Obviously, Ezekiel's in heaven, so he probably knows. And
so Ezekiel 37, then you've got 2 Corinthians 5. Fantastic. This is a chapter to go to regularly. If you need encouragement, if you need reminders, if you need humbled, like, just a great passage. Talking about our heavenly dwelling. He's given his spirit to us as a guarantee.
I love it.
Love that verse, key verse. We must all appear before the judgment seat of Christ to receive what is due for what he has done in the body. Like, it's so that each one may receive what is due for what he has done. And not, so when I say that, I'm not saying like what he has done Christ, like each one will receive like due us. For what he has done. And so it's just that reminder of personal responsibility and accountability. But as you read through 5, you also see that the only way we're righteous is because of Christ. So I love that juxtaposition of like, look, righteousness only comes through Christ. But then we each have a responsibility for our response to it. Because I think that's something that gets lost sometimes in the newness of life thing, in some teaching or in some thinking, where it's like, yeah, Jesus is the one who does this. God is the one who does this, but I'm not absolved of any personal responsibility. You know what I mean?
Or any work at all.
Exactly. You know? Like, I'm raised in newness of life to then walk in newness of life. Like, it's not like I just sit back and am coasting.
And I mean, I think that's the point. Like, he raises us to something. It's not just like a void that we're, he raises us to life and then just leaves us there. But it's
those who live might no longer live for themselves.
Exactly. Like literally.
You now have a new obligation to live in a new way.
It's literally what we were talking about. Like, when we are free from our sin, we're not free from any obligation to anyone now. We're not like this autonomous, being who, we're not like God. God is autonomous and he is totally and completely free in his sovereignty. He doesn't have to answer to anyone. He is the boss. He is the master. When we're free from sin, we're freed from one master unto another one. And so, like, that's the point.
And I think sometimes what trips up a lot, one of the things where I was going with that trips up a lot of believers is we're like, I'm raised in newness of life, but nothing's changing. And it's, okay, well, are you walking in that newness of life or you keep doing the same thing? You know what I mean? Like, that's a good point. Like, if I came into the office every day and I talked to you about my health and I just complained about how physically unhealthy I was, and meanwhile, my breakfast is like a 48-ounce Big Gulp and a candy bar. And then my mid-morning snack are gummy bears. And lunch is fast food that's supersized. And then my afternoon snack is like another, bottle of soda or something, right? Like, you'd be looking at me like, dude, of course your health isn't changing. Like, you can't possibly expect to continue in this old way of thinking and behaving. And see anything different. And I think the same applies for Christians. We're raised in this newness of life, but then it's like you just said, okay, well, we're no longer under the dominion of sin, we're under the dominion of God. So if we continue to behave like we did when we were under the dominion of sin, or if we got saved at a young age, some people might be like, oh, I was saved when I was 6. Okay, well, if we continue to behave like people under the dominion of sin, then we're not going to see anything different in our lives. And we can't be surprised, And so I think that's a really key element that I see in each of these chapters is that it begins, or rather as these chapters build, because then you go into Galatians 2. And if you get to Galatians 2, you really see this wonderful progression of ideas from Ezekiel to Corinthians to Galatians, where Paul spends really the first 2/3 of this chapter talking about his personal decisions and behavior. You know what I mean? So I love that progression of God knits the body together. God provides the breath. God provides spirit. God provides life. God raises us to newness of life. Now do something with it.
Yeah.
And so I really like concluding with Paul's chapter there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, the personal decisions he's making, as a believer. And then also, later on, he then talks about I've been crucified with Christ. It's no longer I who live,
but Christ who
lives in me. But then he goes on to say, in the life that I now live in the flesh, I live for the Son of God.
Yep.
So it's like, well, what does it mean that I live for the Son of God? Obviously, that means that I'm orienting all my decisions around him.
Yep.
Which means I'm doing something.
Yep.
It means I'm working towards, my hands are working towards something.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, because we could get caught up in I've been raised in newness of life, I'm good.
Done.
I mean, that's really just, the old school, get the golden ticket, go to heaven.
Yep.
And that's it. You don't have to worry about anything else.
Get out of jail free card.
It's no.
Yep.
It's not the point.
Yeah. And so I like the progression of the chapters. I like the theme of starting the new year, looking at newness of life and that reminder, especially coming out of the Christmas series, looking at the cast of Christmas. You got the shepherd, the Magi, Mary, Joseph, and it all culminates with Jesus, who is salvation.
Yeah.
And when we call on his name, God is faithful and just to give us salvation, to give us newness of life.
Yep.
And so I think it was a really nice bridge between where we were and now we're into a new year. Where are we going? What are we going to do? I like it.
Hopefully it was encouraging. I mean, I needed it. I needed the reminder. And so I thought it was a great way to start the year.
Yeah, especially because I think a lot of times coming out of the holidays, people are exhausted.
Oh, of course.
We're so excited for the holidays, but then there's also just this exhaustion.
Yeah.
And so I think it was a good pep in the step. Hey, we've been raised in newness of life.
Yep.
Cool, let's do it. Especially because then on the flip side, when you're a kid, you're excited for every new year, right? Because you're 1 year older and there's one new thing that you get to do and stuff. And then adults, it flips and now it's we don't want to be 1 year older. We don't want. And here we go, another year, another year. What's going to go wrong this year? And so I think even just the reminder of newness of life, new isn't automatically bad.
Yeah.
In many cases, newness of life is good.
Newness is a very good thing.
So I think it was good. I think it was a good tone to start the year.
That's good. I'm glad. Yeah. And hopefully people can see the threads in the scriptures. And I think it's important to remember it. Yep. Just as we went on to Peter and he's like, let me stir you by way of reminder.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yep. Peter spent 2 letters talking about victory in Jesus.
Literally, yeah.
All right. If you guys have any thoughts, any questions, any comments, as always, we'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, we will see you guys Sunday.
Hey everyone, Pastor Sam here. Thanks for joining us for another midweek Bible study video. If you didn't see the sermon that we were talking about, you can find it here. Or if you're interested in more of these midweek Bible study videos and thoughts as Pastor Mario and I break things down, you can find that here as well. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel to stay up to date on all our content. Thanks for joining us.